Hi everybody, welcome to Bama Blind. I'm Beverly and today I'm doing a tag video. I was tagged by Joy Who, and I pronounce it Who because that's how Siri pronounces it. Joy H-U is her last name. She's got an awesome channel and I follow her. She's a fellow Seeing Eye graduate, and Joy tagged me several weeks ago, and so I'm sitting down today to do this tag video called Do All Blind People Think the Same? And I've got Jerry who is helping me record, and he's going to be reading the 9 questions to me, and the questions veer from strongly disagree to agree and strongly agree. So I'll try to put them in that format if possible, and sometimes I veer off of that format if it doesn't quite fit in. So Jerry, if you can help me with the first question.
Being blind has enhanced my other senses.
Okay, being blind has enhanced my other senses. I would strongly agree. I am so very visual, even though I am visually impaired. I've always been legally blind, but I'm very, very visual. And when I lost my functional vision over gradual time, I noticed that my other senses were actually picking up things that I wasn't aware that they could pick up. So for example, when I'm walking with my guide dog Gretchen, I can tell if I'm close to a building or if we come into an open space. I never ever listened for that kind of noise before I lost my functional vision. I didn't think that you would be able to hear your footsteps and then tell where the building is and where the building ends. One interesting thing that I noticed years ago, I'm a coffee drinker, so I'll pour a cup of coffee and I hear the different pitch that the sound of the liquid makes as it fills up the cup. So I don't have to stick my finger down in the cup to see where it is. I can just hear the gradual change of the pitch in the sound of the liquid as it fills up the cup. And I've talked to another blind friend on YouTube, John, who exactly said the exact same thing. And I'd never talked to another blind person who had mentioned that. And I've been around a lot of blind people. One of the most interesting things, I think, and this is mostly hearing. Now, I don't think my sense of taste has improved at all. I know people who have normal vision who have outstanding sense of taste. I know people who have normal vision that have outstanding sense of smell. Now, I practice my sense of smell sometimes. Like I'll walk into a room and say, did I leave my coffee mug in this room? And I kind of see if I can find it through smell, and that's kind of an experiment, but it's no different than anyone else just closing their eyes and being able to smell their cup of coffee. I don't think my sense of smell is greatly enhanced, but I use my sense of hearing. If I'm talking to a person and I can hear their head drop like this, and maybe you can hear it too if you're on, but I can tell if someone's looking down at their phone and not looking at me, because the voice, the sound coming out of their mouth is changing its trajectory, so they're looking down like this. And so I can always tell when they're not looking at me. When Gretchen's eating her food, I'll play a trick with Jerry. I say, now she's looking at me, now she's looking at her food bowl, now she's looking at me. And he says, how do you know that? I said, because I can hear her chomping on her food and the sound of her mouth changing as she does that. And one of the funniest things that recently happened is that my sister was talking with me on the phone, and she was in her car and she stopped to talk to a man. And I said, hey, that guy that you're talking to, now I was on the phone, I was on the other end of the phone. I said, that guy you're talking to, you just rolled down your window, the guy you're talking to doesn't have teeth. She said, what? She looked closely at him. She said, how in the world did you know the guy I'm talking to doesn't have teeth? And I said, because you can hear that. So if you close your eyes and you focus on something enough, you can just use that enhanced sense. So I agree that my senses have become more enhanced. I use them to better serve me because my eyes don't serve me very well. Okay, next question, Jerry.
I prefer to date fellow blind people.
Oh no. Jerry, are you blind?
No.
Jerry and I have been married for a long time, since 1992. So he is not blind. I don't have anything against dating blind people. I really never dated any people that were completely blind. Most likely because I wasn't around that many people that were completely blind. In high school, I was the only blind person that I knew. I did go to the school for the blind, but I was young then. I was like in junior high school. So we had lots of friendships, but not really dating. So I didn't date anyone that was blind, but I would I would disagree that I prefer to date someone that's blind. And I don't think it would have anything to do with their blindness. I think it would have a lot to do with their intellect, their ability to communicate, their ability, their interests that were the same with me. It might be a little bit more difficult since I've always dated people who had sight. It really comes in handy, like especially with Jerry. He drives everywhere. He can read signs to me. He can say, okay, here's the ladies' room, have at it. So it might be a little bit more difficult to have a partner that's blind, but I've always dated, way back in the day, I've dated people that were sighted. Okay, third question.
Are blind people less shallow about romantic partners?
I would say in general, I can't speak in generalities because there's not a per se blind culture. So I could only speak for myself, and I'm probably just like everybody else with sight. I can be very shallow, like when I was looking for a life partner, I wanted somebody that had brown eyes. Jerry, what color are your eyes?
They happen to be brown.
I wanted somebody with dark hair. What color's your hair?
It's dark brown.
I wanted somebody with kind of an olive complexion. Jerry, what kind of complexion do you have?
It's kind of an olive dark complexion.
Well, there you go. So that doesn't have anything to do with his personality or his wit or his accomplishments. Those are kind of shallow things. And I just happened to fall in love with somebody that had those characteristics that I really was looking for that are shallow. But I don't think that blind people, I really disagree that blind people are more shallow than others. I think we get more into people's personality and what's inside, because the package on the outside is just not as important as what's on the inside. So that's my answer for that.
Next question. Unsolicited help makes things harder.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I totally agree, strongly agree with that. I am so fiercely independent. I've always been fiercely independent. Even when I couldn't do something adequately, I would try to do it anyway. So I'm so fiercely independent that when someone tries to help me, my very, very first instinct is to deny that help. Now, when I'm out and about and I am minding my own business and someone comes and wants to help me do something, it typically disorients me. One of the things that I find disorienting, and it was very interesting at the Seeing Eye, that we were taught it's much more, it's much more safe to find a door handle and open the door yourself. Well, I live in the South, and there's still a lot of chivalry. That's not a bad thing. But when people open doors for me, and that's unsolicited help, it's very kind, it's a gesture that's kind, but when they open doors for me, I have no idea that the door is swinging to my right or to my left. Is the door coming toward me? Is the door going away from me? And many times it causes more problems than not. So unsolicited help, I typically get much more disoriented when I'm not asking for help, and people tend to try to offer it anyway.
The next question, the city I live in is easily accessible for me.
Oh, that's interesting, because when Jerry and I first moved to our city, we actually lived out in the county, and it was totally inaccessible. It was a gravel road, no sidewalks, 6 miles from the nearest store, a half a mile from the nearest neighbor. So we moved into the downtown historic district of our city. And one of the reasons we did is because there were sidewalks. But when we moved in, the sidewalks were all broken up. It's an old city built in like 1840. So the sidewalks were broken up, but once they fixed the sidewalks and put in curb cuts and truncated bumps and crosswalks, there's one traffic pole that has a beeper that's very accessible to me, but I can walk out my front door and basically go to so many places. Now, if I need to go to the other side of town, once again, because Jerry drives, I don't use Uber and I don't need rural transportation. Those are basically my two other forms of transportation, or to call somebody to get me there. And that's really difficult because our Uber system is not as plentiful as it would be in a very large city. And there is no public bus transportation, so I can't go to and from the mall or to and from restaurant areas, even though I live in a downtown area. So I can walk to pretty much any restaurant that I really like to go to. I can walk to my nail salon, I can walk to the church, I can walk to the place that I have volunteered as a volunteer worker. I can walk to parks. So the sidewalks are all very accessible, and I love it.
The next question is, I am offended when the word blind is used as one of my descriptors.
I'm not offended by using the word blind if it's used to mean that my eyes don't work. So if somebody says, hey, you know that house on the corner where the lady that's blind lives, that's fine with me. That is a descriptor for me. I'm blind. But when somebody says, well, you're just blindly looking for something, well, that's kind of a negative connotation. So that's like blind. I've done a video about this. Blind can mean absence of sight, but it can also be interchanged to mean ignorant, lost in your own thoughts, in a stupor, and in the English language, they are interchanged like that. So I do resent the fact that blind can be used to describe someone who is clueless or unknowing. But if somebody says, you know, the blind lady that's in our book club, that's fine with me. I embrace the word blind, and I prefer that over legally blind, because legally blind kind of makes me think that I have more vision than I have now. I'm functionally blind. My eyes don't function, even though I see stuff, but it's not really good stuff. So no, I don't mind. I don't mind at all when someone refers to me in a descriptor as being blind.
The next question is, being blind has affected my mental health.
That's an interesting, very interesting one. I would say yes. I would somewhat agree, not strongly agree. Mental health issues run in my family. So, and I'm the only one in my family who is blind or visually impaired. So I would tend to think that I might have some mental health issues even if I had normal vision. I almost seem to think that I would have a lot more attention deficit disorder if I had normal vision. And the absence of my vision kind of helps me focus on just one thing, something that I can hear or something that my hands are touching at a certain point, but not everything around me. And I think that if I could see, I actually would have much more attention deficit disorder. But yes, being blind, it does isolate you socially. It creates scenarios many times where you are socially isolated, where you think people don't understand you because they don't take the time to understand you. So sometimes it can be socially isolating, but I really honestly think that genetically or chemically, my brain chemistry is such that I probably would have a touch of depression or mental health issues even if I didn't have a visual disability.
The eighth question is, I have experienced discrimination.
I definitely have experienced discrimination. It's kind of one of those things, though, that it's if you're a female and you've had kids, it's kind of like, okay, childbirth is really, really difficult. And after the baby comes, you forget all about, the pain and the suffering and all that because you got this little bundle of joy. Well, that's kind of how I am. So I have throughout my life, I'm sure, experienced discrimination. In applying for jobs early on, no one wanted to hire a blind recreational therapist until I found my job at a mental health hospital. The most blatant, absolutely most blatant discrimination I have ever heard of or ever seen was after I took my very first test in one of my very first courses in college. It was speech communication, and I got an A on the test for content and a D minus overall. And the D minus was because I couldn't see to keep my handwriting on the very thin lines. I could see if I got really close to write, and my penmanship was okay, but I'm a horrendous speller. So I was called into the professor's office, and I argued the point. I deserve the A for content. That's what she should be measuring. She shouldn't be measuring my penmanship. She said, I'm measuring your atrocious spelling. And then I said, well, I'm blind. Everything I've ever had has been presented to me auditorially. I can't even read large print font like in large print textbooks. And she said, well, then people like you shouldn't be in college. So I then got very, very assertive, and I said, then I will appeal this to the head of the speech communication department because of this attitude you have. And then she promptly said, I am the head of the speech and communication department. So I said, never mind. Anyway, I got a proctor. The resolve to that issue, that was blatant discrimination when she just flat out said, people like you should not be in college. And I could have been extremely discouraged, but I was so tenacious and I was so rebellious at that point that I was going to prove to her that I should be in college and that the rest of my grades were going to be A's or at least B's. And so I got a test proctor who wrote all of my answers down, which I could have done to start with. I just didn't know that she was going to count off for spelling. So I made A's and I got through the test okay and got through the course okay. But that was my worst.
The last question is, if I could regain my sight with a cure, I would want to.
That's really interesting. I would agree with that. I am not one of those that, I've accepted my blindness. I could probably be in a trial for a cure for my particular kind of blindness, because if the trial failed, I think I would be just fine. I'm okay with being blind. But if the trial was successful, there would be a lot of things that I haven't been able to do in 62 years that I would be able to do. One of the things I would really, really love to do is to see color. I'm so color oriented and focused, and I don't have one smidgen of color vision. So instead of in my brain thinking of whatever colors things are, I would love to be able to walk outside and just open my eyes and see the colors of the world. I would just love to see that there are blossoms on bushes, and to see that there's a red truck parked down the street, and to see the green grass and the blue. I would just love to see that instead of making it up in my head and filling in the blanks, which is what I do now. I would absolutely love to see people's faces in full. I would love to see their expressions. I would like to see the little incidental facial expressions, like maybe raising one eyebrow, or, cracking a smile. Or I would just love to be able to communicate non-verbally with people. And then there's the practicality of getting from point A to point B. I would love to jump in a car and drive wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and not have to bother someone with being responsible to get me there, since I really don't have dependable transportation in my city. So yes, I would, if it didn't, if it didn't happen, I would be the perfect candidate, because my life is set up now to be blind. So if I didn't get a cure for my blindness, I would be okay with it, because I'm okay now. But if there was a cure and I was a recipient of that treatment, then I would love to experience a whole different aspect of life, an aspect where I'm able to see more normally. So, and I guess that was the last question, wasn't it, Jerry?
Yes.
Well, thank you everyone for watching, and thanks Joy for referring me to this tag. I think I'm supposed to tag a couple of people, and one of the people I want to tag is John Dunkerley. John is blind. He's an awesome guide dog handler, and I learn a lot from him in his channel. And he's completely blind, and I think he might live in Canada. A couple of people I know have already, I want to tag Nicole Cata. And Nicole, if you'll do this for me, I would appreciate it, unless you've already done it and I haven't seen it, but I don't think that's possible because I've seen all your videos. So I want to tag John and Nicole. And thanks everyone for watching. And Gretchen thanks you. She's sitting under the table, very silent. And thanks, Jerry, for helping me with these questions.
You're welcome.
And I'll talk to you next time, everyone. Have a wonderful upcoming week, and stay safe and healthy and happy. Bye-bye.